Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Say that again.
This is Gabe. Can you hear me?
Yep. What's on your mind, Gabe?
Okay. Hey, so I just I heard Cliff Schecter's call on Friday.
Right.
And that guy that called yesterday.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make a comment on it.
Sure.
Right. So
you're talking about Al Franken's situation.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I hear what you're saying about what you think Cliff Schechter may have been saying, but I think that there's a concept in Judaism that I like to point to when thinking about like how to approach how we talk about issues. So as a member of the tribe, I'm sure you've heard of Qumran, but for the uninitiated, I'll explain that this is a concept that's known as building a fence around the Torah. It's a type of like preventative stringency. So an example that I like to give is when you talk about kashrut being kosher. One of the rules that most people know is that you shouldn't eat a kid in its mother's milk.
Right.
But this also applies to chicken, so you can't, eat chicken and milk at the same time, right? And the law is there, or the rule is there. It's not, that rule is not actually in the Torah anywhere. This is a rabbinical interpretation, and it's an example of Qumran, where you overstep the needs of the actual like legal definitions in order to not confuse people. So in other words, if chicken is allowed to be eaten with milk, then maybe some people fudge the issue. Some people see.
Right, you're basically giving.
Like, well, this is chicken.
Yeah, so, you're giving the law like a 10% birth, let's say.
Right, exactly. So how does it apply to you and Cliff? So regardless of how you may have interpreted what Cliff meant, I was listening to that, and I think that most people who would consider themselves like quote unquote woke were listening to that and could identify that he was using language of oppression. And it doesn't really matter what he was saying because people listening will interpret that as, interpret it and use it and see that it backs up their point. The guy who called yesterday is a perfect example of this. So he heard what Cliff was saying, and even if Cliff, was not doubting the victims, he heard it as doubting the victims. And if you want to practice Qumran when you deal with these questions of how you approach these issues, you say it doesn't matter what I'm saying. Like I need to back off 10, 15, 20% away from my point of view and make it entirely clear that I'm not saying that that we should blame the victims, doubt the victims. Like that's not the point that I want to say. And I don't think that regardless of what he meant, did
you see the video of the USO performances?
I didn't see the video.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, listen, I would say in this instance, the problem is that, I mean, at least this is the way I interpret it, and I don't want to spend too much time on what Cliff said about this, but I think because I had seen the video, I interpreted what he was saying was literal, as opposed to sort of metaphorical or some type of characterization of her. Because if you see the video, it's literal. And which is why I was making the distinction between the idea of like what happens on stage and what happened off stage. Her accusation was that this happened off stage at a time where they weren't actually performing, and that he was supposedly, wanted to rehearse, and in fact he really just basically assaulted her. According to
right, and absolutely, the specifics about the situation don't matter. What matters is how he approaches the question and the language that he uses.
Well, but I'm suggesting that in this instance, what I'm suggesting is, in this instance, the specifics do matter because it's in my mind, he was talking literally, not characterizing her, but talking about the literal performance that this was associated with.
In that case, he needs to spend, if he's going to use language that can be interpreted to question her character, he needs to spend.
But that's my point. My point. He was not questioning
not appropriate to question
her character. She was not questioning.
He was using language that is used.
All right, look. Do me a favor. I do understand. I understand. But there are times where one could assume. Now, had we played the video while he was saying it, it would have been a lot clearer. So I get what you're saying, and I think largely I think that's fair. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe he hadn't seen the video. Maybe wasn't referencing it. But I suspect if you go and you watch the video and you assume that that's what he's talking about, because that's what I was assuming, then you will interpret it differently. Now, I get that in this situation, we want to be careful because we don't want people to misinterpret us. But I can tell you as someone who, professionally speaks for 2 hours a day, that there's only so much you can control how people interpret it. So, I mean, and I can tell you that
it'll never be appropriate for that guy from yesterday to interpret what Cliff was saying in the way that he interpreted it and not think that there wasn't something wrong with the way he said it.
Well, I know, but to be fair to Cliff, I don't think that guy needed Cliff's what Cliff said to formulate his opinion.
Well, don't call him that guy. He's actually a new co-host on TMBS.
All right, listen, I appreciate the call, though. Thank you.
I mean, I could see maybe you preface it saying it is a common trope in rape culture where it's like, oh, she works at Buffalo Wild Wings or Hooters, so you can just grab that.
So I think is Buffalo Wild Wings?
I went there just the other night.
The way that rolled off your tongue. I've
Yeah,
never heard of
you
Buffalo
go to Buffalo Wild Wings.
But
and
yes,
Hooters,
okay, I see what
they're
you're saying.
asking for it.
And so I think maybe just commenting like I'm specifically and explicitly not doing that in this case.
Look, taking Cliff to a woke conversation is like taking a Big Mac to a vegan cleanse, okay? We know this.
I mean,
I'm
get it.
just
Who
kidding.
goes to a vegan cleanse?
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos